Recently, I had the opportunity to travel to Montego Bay, Jamaica, and while I was there, I conducted 6 dives, and I used this opportunity to test dive the Divevolk Sea Touch 4 Max underwater smartphone housing. While we were there, we were also testing some of their accessories, such as their aluminum dive tray, and their red blue water filter, and their underwater wide-angle adapter. Throughout my dives, I captured photos using both an iPhone 14 Plus and a Samsung S22 Ultra. Overall, I did really enjoy using this housing. However, I did run into a couple issues that I'm going to talk about at the end. These next photos were all taken directly on the iPhone 14 Plus with no additional color correction. However, underwater I was using the red blue water filter, which does help bring back some of the color that is lost due to absorption when diving in blue water. This was actually my first time diving in Jamaica, but overall I was very impressed with the variety of marine life and coral that we saw throughout our dives. One of my favorite features about using a smartphone underwater was its adaptive autofocus, and even when I was looking at items up close, it was able to quickly focus to make sure I was capturing sharp images for both photos and videos. For those wondering what it looks like without the red blue water filter, here are some examples of how these photos are overwhelmingly blue. This happens because as you descend underwater, the water actually absorbs different wavelengths of color, often starting with red, orange, yellow, and then green, leaving everything looking blue on the camera. That being said, a red filter is not a perfect solution. As seen in this example, the red filter actually kind of ruined this photo. And this happened because the sun is actually directly behind the diver in the image, and the sunlight is hitting the front of the camera, meaning the sunlight's getting trapped within that red filter, causing it to over-adjust the lower half of the frame. This is a problem that can happen with all underwater filters, and that is actually why a lot of professional photographers will actually not use filters and will either edit their photos in post or they will bring artificial light to help reintroduce colors underwater. This actually brings me into the first issue I had with this camera housing. I do like that you're able to move this lens underwater, so depending on the scene, you can choose to have it on or off. However, you're going to notice that it doesn't line up very well with my phone. Now, this is because I am using the largest phones possible for this housing, but that means that my camera assembly is actually to the far right of the housing, and the filter doesn't always line up. This was definitely more of an issue for the wide-angle lens adapter than the red filter, because for this to work correctly, the camera lens needs to be directly in the middle. Otherwise, it's going to distort the photos and not allow the camera to focus correctly. Now, I was able to get it to work with the S22 Ultra because one of their cameras are a bit lower on the phone. However, I didn't really notice it making the image to seem more wide than it already was, but that could have been because I was using the wide-angle lens on the S22 Ultra. Unfortunately, the standard lens on both the iPhone 14 Plus and the S22 Ultra does not line up with this, so I wasn't necessarily able to test this correctly. The user interface is going to depend on what phone you have in the housing, but for the most part I didn't have issues using the phone both above and below the water. The touchscreen works really well, however, because I was using such a large phone, I did run into issues sometimes trying to swipe from the bottom because it's so close to the bezel, but this shouldn't happen with a smaller phone. Overall, though, I really did enjoy using the Divevolk Sea Touch 4 Max underwater in a warm water environment. I haven't had the opportunity yet to test it in cold water, and I do have some concerns that I'm going to have some usability issues as far as being able to access the touchscreen. But if you're looking for a fairly affordable smartphone housing for some tropical diving, I do highly recommend looking at getting the Divevolk housing because it is a simple product to use, and it also is going to work with pretty much any phone as long as it fits within the housing. They do sell different trays, and a lot of my lens issues I think would be solved if I was using a slightly smaller phone. So keep that in mind and make sure you guys are following along because I am still going to do some cold water testing on this ASAP.